The following broadcast is brought to you by the iGolf Sports Network.
Golf Talk Live is sponsored by the iGolf Sports Network and Golf Tips Magazine. Here's Andrew to tell you more about our sponsors.
iGolf Sports is a live stream broadcast and media production company providing quality programming designed to attract the golfing enthusiast. And Golf Tips, the game's most in-depth instruction magazine, including reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top teaching professionals, all designed to help you improve from tee to green. Welcome to Golf Talk Live with your host, Ted Odorico. Join Ted each week as he speaks with some of the best in golf. This week's special guest will join us a bit later. But first up is another great discussion on Coach's Corner. So let's introduce tonight's Coach's Corner panel.
Welcome back, everybody, and I'm excited to welcome back on the show tonight's featured guest. He was on a little bit earlier on the Coach's Corner panel. Of course, I'm talking about Michael Wheeler, PGA Professional, and I'm going to tell you, for those of you that maybe didn't tune into the first part yet, I'm going to give you an opportunity to hear a little bit about him, and then we're going to get into tonight's discussion. So Michael Wheeler, as I mentioned, is a PGA Professional. He's been a PGA Teach Professional since 2011. And was included in the Golf Digest Best Young Teachers in America list from 2016 to 2022. Recently became a Golf Tips Magazine Top 25 Instructor in America. And he's competed at all levels thus far in his career, including junior golf, NCAA golf, and professional golf. Says he still competes in professional events and believes in keeping up with his game, obviously to set an example for his students. And some of Michael's clients have included top juniors, amateurs, and college golfers, as well as some touring professionals, one of which shot a 59 while working with him. So kudos to him for that. And we'll maybe hear a little bit about that and more. But Michael, welcome back to the show, and thanks for being tonight's featured guest, as well as doing a heavy lift earlier on the panel discussion at Coach's Corner. So thanks for coming back.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Ted. Thanks.
So I figure if an old guy like me can stay up late, you can stay up late too.
Yeah,
so
I'm on Eastern time. It's past my bedtime.
Right. That's true.
I'm not as young as I was when I first started doing the show with you.
No, that's true. So I want to start off, and I know we've talked, you were on actually Golf Talk Live years ago when we were on a different platform. And you had reached out to me recently and said you'd love to reconnect and come back out and be on the show again. So I said, let's get you out here and get you back into the mix with Coach's Corner. Of course, we're coming towards the end of the season, so we didn't have a lot of opportunities this season by the time we reconnected, but we're going to get you into the mix for next season in 2026. But I wanted to get you to talk a little bit about why golf. I want to go way back to your earlier days, long before you became a teaching professional, coach, what have you. Why golf? What was it about the game that appealed to you, and what was your earliest memories of the game?
Oh man, earliest memories. So my earliest memories, besides just going to the range with my dad, and my dad took me. So I teach in Delaware right now. I live in Maryland. We went to Ocean City, Maryland. We played, Eagles Landing, I think it was. No, I don't remember. I think it was Eagles Landing. Anyways, neither here nor there.
Well, you are getting
yeah. What? Huh? I can't hear it. No, I'm kidding. But no, we played Eagles Landing, and that was my first experience on the golf course. And I will never forget this. There was this elderly couple in front of us. It was a husband and wife playing golf. And I think we met on the first tee or something. That part's fuzzy, but my dad had told them that it was my first time on a golf course. And every single hole we got up to the hole, and the hole was filled with golf balls. Like every single hole, they just piled, 5-6 balls into the hole. So like, I still remember, I'd hit the shot because like my dad, like I'd hit it in the rough, and my dad would let me like fluff up the lie a little bit.
Sure.
So like, when I first started playing, it's like, yeah, he's like, hit it in the fairway. I'm like, why? I hit it in the rough. You let me tee it up. Why not?
Right.
So, so we, I still remember like running up to the green and looking to see how many balls were in there. And I think they were probably running low because there was the last couple holes, there was only like 2. So it was just funny, but it was a fun experience. And I think that was kind of something that set the tone for me with the game, of something that, kids that are, I think, I don't know, I was probably 4 or 5, I think. I don't know. I was young and, can play up until, there's people that play on their last day, so you can play it, all shapes and sizes, and you could, get it in the hole in all sorts of different ways. And I think as I got older, I was a multi-sport athlete as a kid. I played soccer, I played baseball. Those were the main ones that I was really involved with. And I think being a multi-sport athlete helped me a lot with golf, because just learning motor patterns with sport in general, is super helpful when taking on such a complicated motion like the golf swing. But I played a junior tournament the year before my senior year, or my freshman year of high school. And I shot, I think, 78, and I won the tournament, and I was hooked. I was like, like, this is a game that, like, you're never going to perfect it. You're always trying to get better.
Right.
And, 54, as far as I know, is still not, has not been attained yet. I don't think. And there might have been one person that did it. But either way, a couple people have come close. But, like, bowling, perfect game, 300. It happens.
Yep.
It doesn't happen in golf. Like, even if you shoot 54, I'm sure that person could probably look back and be like, ugh, lost a shot there. Like, like, you're always just trying to get better. And I think for someone like me that clearly has ADHD, you've known me long enough, so I think someone like me that squirrels off and can, constantly wants to learn and improve something, this is the perfect sport for it.
Yeah. And it's interesting, I just want to add a quick note, talking about the score. I remember when 59 was the big thing, talking about. Now it just shatters the imagination to think that, we're talking about 54, as a number. I mean, no, if you dial that back 20, 30 years ago, and even somebody saying 59, they'd be looking at you like you were crazy. And now we're talking about 54, and it's just, it's amazing where the game has gone. So
it's like the 4-minute mile.
Right. Exactly. So you had a taste of some competitive golf as a junior, and then obviously at some point you morphed into the NCAA. So I'm assuming you obviously played some college golf. So how did that transition happen? Where did you play, and how did that experience help propel you to play a little bit more? And then obviously we'll talk about how you transition into the teaching side of game.
Yeah. So my competitive story is very different than a lot of junior golfers nowadays. I mean, kids are starting so young. I mean, my son is 10, and he just started really playing golf this year, and he wanted to play in tournaments. So we got him in some U.S. kids golf tournaments. Shout out to Josh Woodward at the Philly junior, the local Philly junior tour. He's been awesome in setting all this up. But like, there's kids in his age group that started like 4 years ago, and they're 10. I'm like, it's just, they're starting so young, and that was not my story. I played when I was a kid, and then that summer before, my parents would drop me off at the golf course once I realized I wanted to do this, and play. I didn't know competitively was my thing, but they would drop me off in the morning at 8 and come back and pick me up at 6 or 7, and I'd stay there all day. So my first tournament, I had already played a lot of golf leading up to that, before competitive golf was even, a discussion. So, but yeah, through high school, I played some, I played high school golf for Calvert Hall here in Towson, Maryland. And I played some AJGA stuff. I won an AJGT tournament, which I don't even know if that tour is still around, but it was a national junior tour that was at Kingsmill. So I won that. So that was something that really helped my playing resume going into college. So I ended up playing for Stetson University, and started in 2004, and played there up until my senior year. When I left, we had some family stuff come up, so I left the first semester of my senior year. But yeah, I played there for just over 3 years, and it was a lot of fun. It's a lot of work too, and that's what I want to make sure that I always tell my junior student is, if you want to play college golf, that's great, but don't forget the reason why you're there, and that's to get an education. So, and sports are great with facilitating that and giving kids an opportunity to get an education for less money, which is fantastic. But yeah, I transitioned, with winning that one event, which was super helpful. And, I was lucky enough to get picked to start on the Stetson team. So that was a good time.
What was the Tell us just a little bit about the experience at Stetson, because a lot of people look at golf, they understand it's an individual sport, but it's different when you're playing collegiately, because now you're part of a team. So it's a whole different atmosphere. I mean, of course, you're out there hitting your own golf balls and things, but at the same time, you have other people now that are dependent on you, and vice versa, to pull your weight. So it's not just all up to you. So how did that experience mold you as both a player, and what did you learn from the coach or coaches that were involved on that team that gave you some forward momentum as you decided, okay, I want to get into the teaching side of things a little bit more? We're going to talk about that in a second, but
Yep.
Was there some things, some nuggets, if you will, that you learned from that coaching experience that you had as a player, that helped propel you into your own teaching career a little bit later on? But how was the overall experience playing on a college team as opposed to playing as just an individual?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was a great learning experience. It to your point, is very, very different. As a junior, you're playing just yourself. The high school team, yeah, you have a team, but here we play 12 hole matches, and there you're playing, either 54 or 72 hole tournaments. So, and you're traveling for it, and you got a lot of homework to catch up on besides that. So, our coach at the time, the coach is different now. Our coach at the time was a little more hands off. He kind of organized things, and he was great. I just, we didn't get a coaching experience like a lot of people get. I think he did things more, a little more differently than some of the modern coaches do. But our system essentially worked if you played well enough in that event, if you made the traveling squad, which is 5 guys, and I forget what the scoring, I think he wanted a 72.5 or 73, something like that, scoring average or better, and you'd automatically play in the next one. If not, everybody went through a qualifying process. So I think that was the biggest thing that I picked up on, was just trying to learn as I was going through some swing changes myself to try and get my game, because I knew I wanted to try and play. I wasn't really thinking teaching yet. I was thinking more playing. And some injuries and things like that sidelined me a little bit. But I think learning how to, despite working on my game and trying to improve my game every day, which we should be always trying to improve something, even if it's just course management. But putting aside the drills and the swing changes that I'm working on and going out and still trying to score. Because there were a couple of days where I didn't do that and put up around in the 80s and I didn't play. But I think, if I remember correctly, I think I qualified for all but one of the travel squad events. And that was when I initially had hurt. Actually, I'd hurt my wrist, coincidentally enough. That one got better. And then I redid it. But it was a learning experience, more so on just learning how to manage my scoring and understanding that what you're doing on the range and what you're doing on the golf course can be 2 separate entities at times. You still, when you're working with a tour player, if you're making a swing change, they still have to make a livelihood. You still have to figure out how to get the golf ball on the hole, even while making a change. Look at Max Homa, perfect example right now. He's making a change, and bouncing back and forth between a couple instructors, and Mark Blackburn and John here at Congressional, between those 2 guys. And I think he's back working with Mark again. But either way, like, he still had a rough year this year, but he managed to keep his card, and he's starting to play some better golf now. But like, you still got to get the ball in the hole from a competitive standpoint. So I think that was probably the biggest thing that I picked up on during my college and early professional days, was just managing scoring.
And you're, at some point, obviously, you morphed into the professional side of things. Were you looking at playing professional golf as far as maybe initially mini tours, and then into potentially the bigger tours like the PGA? Was that something that was in your forward vision, if you will, or did you always kind of know in the back of your mind that I'd like to teach the game as well, but I'm going to see where I can go with my playing first, and then we'll see where that goes? So how did that sort of transition? How did that happen? Where did it move after you finished the college golf? What was your next step? And then we'll start talking a little bit about how you again, transitioned into a teaching professional?
Yeah, no, I left college and I turned pro like the week after I left college, and I played in my first professional event at the Riviera Open down in Florida. It was a mini tour event, still going on. I think it's the longest standing mini tour event in the country that's run. It's a fun event. It's a 2-day. I think it's a 2-day tournament. But yeah, it's a fun tournament. It's actually at the golf course so my first golf experience was at Eagles Landing. When we went to go stay in Florida with my family, Riviera Country Club was where we always went to. My dad and I went to go play. So it's kind of cool that was the first professional experience. But yeah, I turned pro right after leaving college. I played the mini tours for a couple of years before moving back home up to Maryland to be with family for a bit. I actually got out of the business for a couple of years because I didn't know if working in the business was something that I wanted to do. And then just the more I thought about it, the more I was just like, you know what, I really want to be involved in the game in some way. And, I had a good relationship with my then swing coach, and, so we talked and I started teaching, and just, I really enjoy helping people and helping them achieve their goals. And, now that, with all the injuries I've had and some health issues on my end, and quite frankly, I have a family, and the traveling lifestyle exclusively to play is very, very difficult. So like being able to help people achieve the goal that I didn't get to see through is where I would like to see my career go towards as I try and build on my career, and helping people locally, but like still having those players that have those high aspirations is something I really enjoy.
I think it's good because you get sort of the best of both worlds. You took a shot at leading up to the professional level, and obviously injuries and other things sort of put you a little bit back on your heels at some point, but you were able to transition. And there's a lot of people on tour and in golf profession that have gone that route where for a good example is my friend and co-host on the Women of Golf show, Cindy Miller. She was an LPGA professional. She was on the Big Break. I think it was the second one, and really got some notoriety there. Played for the University of Miami on their golf team, and has just recently been inducted into the Hall of Fame, both for the University of Miami, but also in the LPGA as well. And but she played on tour for a number of years, but was never like a top player. And then got into the the women's senior circuit, but she gravitated to the teaching side and now teaches and occasionally plays in some events here and there, but ended up becoming a phenomenal teacher. She was never a top player, and I'm not suggesting that's the case here, but had a similar path in the sense that you both have dabbled into the professional level for one reason or another. Yours may be more injury related. Hers was just never had the ability to be able to go beyond where she had, but is excelling as one of the top teachers in her division. So, I mean, I just think that that experience that you're bringing to your students to be able to retrieve and say, this is what I did, this is my journey, and I'm going to help you get to your journey, whatever that may be. So I think there's some valuable nuggets that you can share, is I guess the words that I'm looking for. But so you've worked with some mini tour players as well as playing on tour and so forth. So talk about that as being an instructor for that. You mentioned a little bit, trying to give that balance between the range and then obviously becoming a better player. What are some of the struggles that these guys have out there that you help sort of piece together for them?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it at that level, so much of it is mental and between the ears, and to be able to put the scores up that these guys are shooting. I mean, look at Michael Brennan, that he just won last week, and I think his scoring average coming into that tournament with his last 22 rounds or something like that was like 65 or 66. I mean, that is in all competitive rounds. I mean, that's golfing your ball. So, and these guys, there's a dime a dozen out there of guys that can put up numbers like that and can hit driver ball speeds of 190 plus. but being able to score and being able to manage your time and your practice efficiently is important. But also trying to not get into the fads of what you're hearing. And, when you're out there, a lot of guys will say, oh, look at your swing. I see this guy and this guy did this and that. And the guys talk and like to talk golf swing, which is fine, but it's dangerous at that level because you can be like, oh, well, he did that. And now look, he's playing really well. So like having a dedicated plan and having someone to kind of walk through that with you is important. But I think just making sure that they're optimizing what they already do. Most of those guys don't need big changes. They got to that point already. They need to optimize what they're doing. They need to make sure that they're practicing efficiently and that they're scoring as best as they can and that they can do it under pressure. And being able to, having a competitive background, even though I didn't make it all the way to the show, it definitely helps, I think, because, I know what that feels like to be on the tee and have some, some butterflies and some things like that. And, I know what it's like to get on the first team, be like, man, I really got to go to the bathroom. This is not fun. Like, you don't hear that stuff, but like, if you think of, so like, it's like, but you think back to what Tiger says, you look at these guys and they look like they have it all together and they're good, but it's like that duck sitting on the water, like on top, it looks like they're just slowly moving along, but underneath it's like, their feet are going like crazy. And to something that Tiger said a long time ago is that the second that he doesn't feel nervous on the first tee is the second he's going to stop.
Yeah.
And being nervous is good. Having anxiety is good as long as it doesn't overtake you. Right. So, but having, a coach, whether it's a swing coach or just someone there to guide you on the process is I think something that will help the player get through that because there's so many ways to get there. Little less ways now than there was, back when I was playing, it was Q school and there was 25 cards or 20 cards, whatever it was. Now Q school, thankfully they're back and giving 5 cards, which I think is great. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to make it out there. There's a lot of guys trying to do it. But it is doable, but I think going there and the first thing, if a player gets, goes to a swing coach and the first thing they say is, I want to change X, Y, Z. You might want to be hesitant just because you got there for a reason. Yeah, you might have things that need to be improved on, but overhauling a swing is probably not on high up on the list, so just optimizing and fine tuning a race car to a point is what we're trying to do with those players. Whereas you get your average golfer that we have at the club, that's a different story. Like if you're hitting a banana ball that comes back at you at the end of it, we need to fix that. So, and that usually requires a bigger change, but those guys aren't doing that. They got to learn how to work the ball. They got to learn how to manage their game under pressure.
Yeah. And you touched on a point as I was listening to you, and this was something that we talked about earlier in the Coach's Corner segment of the show, which I strongly urge people to listen a little bit later on. But, you talked about, making those changes in that, and obviously, picking your coach. You've got to be careful of that. There's been a lot of players. Nick Faldo was a good example. Again, changing, was a great player, changing, reinventing the swing. Now, Tiger was able to get away with it a little bit more, but he's a, phenomenal individual, and he's just a diamond, in the rough initially, but he just, shone over the years. But he's made multiple changes and reinvented the wheel many times. But that's a rare occasion to be able to do that and be able to compete at a high level. And you're right, with the onslaught of social media and YouTube and things like that, if you start, or even other players, talking out on the range, and I'm talking about at the professional level, if they're standing out there and you're working with, Coach A and he's working with Coach B, and you're trying to make some changes because he's doing really well, his coach might be a great coach for him, but he may not be a great coach for you, and vice versa. So you have to be really careful, especially like you said, when you're now getting into paychecks. At an amateur level, as you pointed out, it's a little bit different. You can be a little bit more flexible, but when you start getting into a higher level, you've really got to pay attention to what you're doing. And that's not to knock anyone, but it's just a reality is if you want to be a more accomplished player, and you're already at a high level. I mean, if you're already playing out on tour, you did something right to get there, because that's not something that everybody, that's a very small percentage of people that get there. So you don't want to start monkeying with the, with the wheel, so to speak, and start really making drastic changes, because then you could end up putting yourself back a long way, and that's not good. What are some pet peeves? There's some myths out there in the golf, and this is something I want to ask you, get your thoughts on, because you probably hear a lot more now than I do. But what are some of the myths, and let's talk about some of the pet peeves that just kind of, that you hear out in the golf vernacular. You see it on the social media platforms, the golf group. Actually, real quick note, that's one of the reasons why I started doing this show, because I started reading some of the stuff on the Facebook golf groups, and I just said, I want to bring these conversations out on a platform like this, and that's what I'm doing for 13 years. So, but you've probably seen some of the same conversations. You've probably witnessed it over the years as well. What are some of the myths, and what are some of the pet peeves that you've accumulated over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I think a common myth is just that one size fits all. Like, there's not one swing that fits every single player. It's in my opinion, it doesn't work that way. Everybody is built differently. Everybody has different strengths. Everybody has different ranges of motion. And that's why I think TPI has been a huge proponent. And there's been some stuff online in the last 24 hours, really, where for any teachers that are watching, they've probably seen some of the stuff where there was a guy that made a post that said TPI is not helping you, it's hurting you. And he went off on all these reasons why. And most of them are, quite frankly, crap.
Right.
Because TPI is about helping the player do what they can do better, right? And I think we talked about this earlier, but a cardinal sin in golf instruction, whether you're teaching a beginner or Tiger Woods, maybe not Tiger Woods right this second, but number one golfer in the world, let's say Scotty Scheffler, you can't have them do something that they can physically not do. If they can't physically do it, you can't make them do it in the golf swing. It's just not going to happen. Or you're going to break them and they're going to get injured. That's just
it's irresponsible to do that.
It is absolutely. So so I think that's just something that when I'm teaching and when I'm talking to students, and to touch on what you had talked about a minute ago, though, I think when people are looking for a new instructor, whether it's me, whether it's Clint, whether it's Chris Como, it doesn't matter. Treat that conversation, the initial conversation with the instructor when you're looking, as like a job interview. You're trying to find someone that has a good philosophy that you agree with, but also someone that you get along with. There's a personality piece to it, So that's important to understand. But I think the biggest pet peeve that I have is the keep your head down, or you hear it on the range and the guy down, his buddy was like, oh, you topped it because you didn't keep your head down. No, the head is not the problem. Your spine is the problem, because the spine went like that. Right? It looks like the head's coming up, but the head. So what do people do? Like, oh, I kept my head down. All right, well, I'm going to swing and keep my head down. They still top it, and I don't know why. Well, it's because you're not turning now, because you keep on looking that way. Put strain on the neck, and put strain on your back, and I've seen people get hurt because they're trying to keep their head down. Look at Annika Sorenstam, David Duval, Joe Durant, Dustin Johnson a little bit. There's plenty of other guys that will pivot their head and start looking before the ball is even off the club face. So, and I think Annika, if I remember correctly, went on record saying that started as a drill. She was keeping the head down too long. It was hurting her rotation or pivot. So she started letting the head release as a drill. She hit it better, so she stuck with it.
Yep.
And that happens a lot. I mean, Ben Kruper, the YouTube sensation, the pause king or whatever they call him, but that pause started as a drill. So, for a lot of times, if you do a drill and it works, don't be afraid to take it on the golf course, even if it's just to try it out and work on transition. But yeah, I mean, I think my biggest pet peeve 100% is the keep your head down thing. And because that is not, the head is the least of your problems if that's what's happening.
Well, I think where some of that derived from too, and I think it was a misunderstanding, is, I remember Nicholas talked about his golf coach, Jack Grout, talked about how Nicholas talked about how Jack would grab his hair because he was, moving his head too much. But really what he was saying was he wanted him to keep it steady at a certain point throughout the swing. And then obviously your head turns as you rotate through, and Jack's did as well. But he might have kept it a little bit more stationary than maybe other players did, but it worked for him.
Absolutely.
That was really what he was trying to convey. And I think I agree with you. I think that keep your head down I think, is people misunderstood what really coaches were talking about. It wasn't just to like keep it, and not move. It was just to keep it, steady in position until at such a point that it rotates naturally as your body is rotating. So I agree wholeheartedly. I want to slip in there because I didn't mention them earlier. And there was a reason I didn't mention them, because I knew we would have a chance to talk about it. But one of the things that you touched on in the Coach's Corner segment earlier on tonight was that you really like to keep up with a lot of current trends. You like to also go to a lot of seminars and things. And I'm going to just read out a few things that you are certified or have experienced some of these different programs, and then I'm going to get you to talk about a few of them here. So obviously you're a certified PGA teacher and coaching professional. You're also TPI level 1, golf bioswing dynamics level 2, TrackMan level 2, swing catalyst KVest level 2, golf biomechanist by Dr. Kwan that you talked about earlier as well. So you've got a lot of certifications there. People that are listening that are maybe not in the golf business may not understand what all that means. Okay, he's got a lot of certifications. What is he, a doctor? What is he? No, there's a reason why you did this. They each really cover a different area in the golf swing and that sort of thing, and in golf in general. So why the certifications, or why the programs? What was it to you? Was it just more of a learning to bring more to the table for your students and have a better understanding for both yourself, obviously, and your students? Or was it just an interest or a fascination just on your own? So, and I'm not being facetious when I say that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, what was the reason? Because I know a lot of others do that as well. Not everybody, but a lot of others take those pursuits as well. So what was the reason for looking into a lot of these different certification programs?
Yeah, well, so I look at learning in general and being, specializing in instruction as a PGA professional, instead of being a head golf professional or director of golf or whatever it may be. I look at it as, if I'm not constantly learning, I'm getting worse. So I want to constantly be learning. I want to constantly be reading books. I want to, watch videos and learn, what other people are doing, so I can maybe make my instruction help my students better and faster. Some of it, is because I like learning about the golf swing. I enjoy it. It's fun. It's another small piece of it is we have to have a certain amount of continuing education in order to maintain PGA accreditation and keep our membership active. So that's a piece of it as well. But the
Sure.
95% of the reason why I do it is because I want to be able to offer more to my students. They're paying me a dollar amount to help them get better. And, especially when my goal as an instructor, is to get them better as quickly as I can, but I also want to work with the better players as well. I enjoy doing that, and I enjoy working with the amateur and the beginner as well. But because I had that tour experience, that's definitely an area I'd like to see my career go. But I think having all those backgrounds, so like the Dr. Kwan class, that was very, very science backed. We talked about center of pressure, center of mass, moment arms, people, and how a moment arm and how you're pushing against the ground can increase or decrease speed, things like that. And then, there's the two that I think were the most impactful for me were bioswing dynamics, which is run by Mike Adams and E.A. Tischler. It's a series of assessments and different patterns that you'll see, and you want to make sure that the patterns match. So we do an assessment with a student and have them do a couple of different tests and see, hey, are you a side on golfer? Are you an under golfer? Are you an on top golfer? Now, there are preferences that I like to see for people, but if someone, does a certain test and goes this way, right, versus someone that goes this way, there might be a reason why that happens. There might be something in their shoulder and why they can't go this way. You just want to make sure that certain patterns in the golf swing match the assessment that you saw before the lesson. And then the other one is TPI. Absolutely, I love the TPI stuff, and that one's more, is developed in a way to find, like they call it a body swing connection, right? So I want to make sure that I take what my body can do. Yes, we can improve it, but we're going to improve that in the gym. And then if there's pain, we're going to go ahead and refer that person to a doctor and, hey, make sure there's not a structural problem.
Right.
And then if there's not a structural problem and there's not a fitness problem, it's just a learning problem. Well, then, maybe we need to start with, okay, let's have a concept conversation and make sure that your understanding of what should happen is what you're actually doing, or maybe your concept of your understanding of what should happen is wrong.
Right.
And we need to fix that. And sometimes that's all you have to say to somebody is, hey, no, do it this way. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. And then they do it. It's like, oh, that's different. So but I, like I mentioned in the earlier segment, I look at all these certifications and every education event I go to, I'm always trying to pick something up, whether it's someone I agree with or someone I don't agree with. You still can learn from them.
You sure?
And I'm trying to take those things that I learn and put them into a toolbox. And when I have a student in front of me, I can pull that out. So like, you're working on your house, you wouldn't grab a screwdriver to put a nail on the wall. You would grab a hammer. So, I look at all of these different certifications and all of these different training platforms and assessment tools that I have as a way to have a tool in my toolbox to pull out for somebody that has XYZ problem. So, and they're fun.
Well, and I want to touch on that just a little bit, and let me just clarify something for those tuning into the broadcast that maybe aren't familiar with what TPI stands for. It's Titleist Performance Institute. So I just want to throw that out there. Yeah, that's what the plaque is above there. Some people aren't familiar. I mean, obviously people in the golf business are, but for those that are listening, maybe don't know what's TPI. That's what it stands for, is Titleist Performance Institute. So
yeah, and they have a good. They just started putting out a lot of YouTube videos in the last year or two. If you just look up, I think it's My TPI is the page, but it's great. It's a lot of really good information. Just if you're the average golfer, just be careful, because sometimes it can, death by 1,000 cuts. So don't, just because you watch it doesn't mean you have to go try it. But
that's a whole another conversation with that, with all the videos that are out there and so forth. But you're exactly right. You've got to be very careful about that. But you raise again another really good point about this, about these different programs that you're taking, because again, as we talked about earlier tonight, everybody learns things a little bit differently. Some people may be very technical driven. So, getting into the biomechanics discussion a little bit. And I want to clarify something, because again, this is for really two reasons. This is for the amateurs that are tuning into the show, and this is for fellow professionals. The one thing that you have to guard against as a professional is taking these certifications and then trying to teach your student the certification process. And meaning by that is getting into all the ins and outs. The idea is for you to learn from this and then sort of water it down a little bit and pull the important nuggets out of these different programs and these different philosophies, however you want to terminize it, to the students, because we have to be careful that we don't overwhelm the student. It's not there you're not taking the course to then reciprocate the course to the student. It's there to use that valuable information that you've learned to be able to apply it to that student's circumstance. Again, biomechanics is a good one. Again, somebody that's a little bit more technical driven, maybe wants to understand how the body's working and how it works in conjunction. But maybe for somebody else, they just need to see you perform a certain task and they can emulate that. So again, you have to be very careful with that. And I think they're very good programs, but I think you would even agree that some of the instructors out there get too far down the weeds and talking too technical about these programs with their students, to the point where it's actually causes more confusion. So again, I'm not saying that as a knock to any of them. I'm just saying that as a golf professional, I think we have to be careful that we don't get too technical with students when it's not appropriate. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like what we talked about earlier, everybody learns differently, not just visual versus kinesthetic versus, right, all this stuff like feeling, seeing, doing, right? So it's not just that. It's some people like numbers, so might use TrackMan and say, okay, that was 3 left, I want 3 right. And once I show them what that looks like, they can say, oh, 3 left, got it, okay, 3 right. Some people, you say 3 left, they're like, huh? Right. So
exactly.
So being able to tailor your teaching to the student, and I've always thought that was the mark of a good teacher, was being able to say the same thing 20 different ways. So because if it doesn't mesh with this guy, it might mesh with the next one. Right. So, but then some people who maybe they're a doctor, maybe they just, like us, they just nerd out and love learning about the golf swing and the technical aspects to it. And you say, okay, well, you didn't have a whole lot of radial deviation there, where, some people that don't know that would say, hinging, unhinging, right? It means the same thing, radial owner,
Right.
But some people might not know what that means. If you say, "Oh, you didn't radial deviate enough," oh, what? Oh, you didn't
Right.
hinge your wrist enough.
Right.
Cock your
Exactly.
wrist up, right? Because it's the golf swing is so it can be extremely extremely complicated if you dive into every little piece of how each different body part should move in an ideal world. But being able to then kind of water things down a little bit and say, okay, here's where you were, here's where the drill puts you, and then let's go ahead and try and apply what we did to the drill. I saw a video today of Rory talking where he's like, I think someone asked him how they could get better faster. He said, go to the range and do a drill that works for you 100 times, and then try and hit like 10 balls, and then do the drill 100, and then go out and try and reproduce that drill on the golf course, right? And that philosophy is probably going to be more effective than just going out and banging ball after ball. Practice doesn't make you better. Practice makes permanent, not perfect.
Right. Exactly. And that's really what I was trying to get at is, and you stated it very well, is I think there's, many different ways of explaining the same thing. And again, I equate it to, if you have a kindergartner there, you're not going to teach them a college course. And if it's a college student there, you're not going to teach them like a kindergartner. So again, you have to learn how to speak their language. And if they're very technical driven, then you can be a little bit more tech. And if you want to, have that conversation in more detail after your lesson, because that person likes to know as much as you do type of thing, that's okay. That's appropriate. And that's really what I was saying. And you laid it out very well with your example. Now, something that was interesting, I want to get you to touch on a little bit, and that was that you were a 3-time celebrity stage presenter for the North Coast Golf Show. So that exactly. So tell us what was going on there, and just give us the inside scoop.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was just knowing the people that run the place, and I like to present. I like to, I was in the Philadelphia section. I was a member of the instruction and education committees, so we put together some education events for PGA members in the area, and so like teaching, teaching the teacher type stuff is always something that I enjoy. So I forget who was running it. I know Bob Kramer was running at the time. He's since passed. And then I think Lou Guzzi was running it since then. But they had asked me to put together some stuff to present. And I don't remember what I talked about at the time. But it was something that, because we have, it's a golf expo that runs in I think the Northeast, maybe even the Eastern Seaboard here, but the North Coast Golf Show.
Sure.
I think it kind of hovers this like Northeast area of the United States. But yeah, we put together, a couple presentations and kind of just did like my favorite drills for certain, common faults that we see. And, as people were walking around, they would swing by and watch it. But they had some cool presenters. Like they always have a long drive guy there, and it's fun to see as long as you have, earmuffs because it's loud.
Right.
But yeah, that was a pretty fun experience being able to present at the expo. That was a good time. And then we always the Philadelphia section always has free lessons throughout that expo that we offer. So there's a bunch of pros from the section offer their time and come out and give free lessons to people that come out to the expo.
Always good to give back,
absolutely,
from the game, and I think that speaks volumes about this industry as well. I think there's no other industry like the golf industry. Is there's so many great professionals that are connected at all different levels, both not just players, but the teaching side of it as well, and obviously administrative. So there's just a lot of good people in this industry. So I wanted to, as we get close to wrapping up here, I wanted to just to give you a moment, because I know, we've talked about golf here quite a bit, and I know that you and I have communicated off air about some things that you're going to be working on in preparation for Golf Tips Magazine as one of the new top 25 instructors. I'm really excited about that. We'll unpack that a little bit later. But you had mentioned something in one of the conversations. I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, but I want to get you to touch on that a little bit. Did I hear you correct in one of the communications that you said that you are something to do with is it not ATM. What is it? What's the word I'm looking for? That you're involved with the healthcare side of things. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. I'm a licensed paramedic. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was
Yep.
looking. I was trying to think of the word. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
lost. So I found that really interesting because I know obviously golf is first and foremost, but when I saw that and you had mentioned that, I was thinking, well, I got to ask about that on the show. So tell us a little bit, how did that come about?
Yeah, so I had some personal stuff come up and
Sure.
COVID happened and the whole 6 foot social distancing thing, and that made things very difficult for golf instructors for a while. So so I took some time, and I was still teaching part-time on a part-time basis and working with some of my clients, but I took some time and got my paramedic license. And I've worked as a paramedic now in Wilmington as well as Maryland. In Wilmington, Delaware, like Newcastle area. That was an experience. And I still volunteer in my time, and I still have a job. I work a couple days a week where I go out and work as a licensed paramedic in my hometown where I live. So just to kind of what we were talking about before, like I like helping people, and I like helping people with their golf games, but just the overall giving back to the community and helping people with something that they need help with, right? So people don't call paramedics and police and all that stuff on a good day. They call them on their worst day. So I was like, you know what, let's look into this. I've always liked learning about the body, and it's given me an even greater understanding and appreciation of how the body moves and how everything's connected and things like that. So but yeah, I during COVID I got my paramedic license, and still do that from time to time. But yeah.
No, I think that's great. I mean, and I apologize. I was trying to think of the word, and it just escaped me for a moment. But
I wish I was an ATM. That'd be nice.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know why I said that, but anyway,
that's all right.
But so what's interesting though is because that line of work, as you said, kind of really goes into your golf a little bit. Having a better understanding of how the body works can then sort of be incorporated into your teaching understanding as well, because now you can again, having that extra experience, you can bring that in, believe it or not, into your golf instruction and saying, okay, the body works this way, and this is some of the challenges that you may have. So there's a lot of crossover there I could see, where it would give you a little bit of an advantage as a instructor. So yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, it's helped a lot with the competitive golfer too, because you get on the tee and you get nervous. I mean, that's your body's fight or flight. It's a sympathetic, response that everybody has. Like pupils dilate, everything. You start to sweat. You start, heart rate goes up, breathing goes up. But like having an understanding of that, like kind of learn some cheats on how to reverse that, and then I haven't learned to do it for myself, but you can just ask my wife that one. But but like just learning how to, all right, this is a response to something that my mind sees as a threat, or something that's got my heart rate up. Well, let's take some breaths. Let's calm down. Let's do some different things to just kind of simplify things. But yeah, it's definitely helped gain a better understanding and appreciation of the human body. It's quite a thing.
Well, it's interesting. I think it's great. And I like the fact that you're doing things not only on the golf course to give back to your community, but also to the others as a paramedic. So being able to give back when people need you the most. So I think that's just a fantastic attitude to have. And I think it's something that we should all aspire to, is to do what we can to help one another. Well, Michael, listen, we got to wrap it up, and I really enjoyed having you on and getting a chance to expose you in a little bit more detail. I know there's a million things that we can talk about, and we'll unpack that in future shows. But I really appreciate you coming on twice tonight on the Coach's Corner panel, joining our good friend Clint Wright. And I want to give you another quick opportunity here just to let the folks know if they want to reach out as I get ready to wrap up the show, how they can best reach out if they want to communicate with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the show, Ted. It's always a good time. So, easiest way to get a hold of me is just my website has my cell phone number and my email address, Michael Wheeler Golf. You can also just Google that; it should take you right there. I also have a YouTube and Instagram, TikTok, all all that stuff, and all those handles, I believe, are Michael Wheeler Golf as well. So if you look those up, you should be able to find me. But if people are interested in reaching out, please feel free. My cell phone number is on there. You can usually text is the easiest way. So if I'm teaching, I can get back to you faster than calling. But welcome to email as well.
Sounds good. Well, on that note, again, a special thanks to all of my guests tonight. Again, earlier, Clint Wright for being on the Coach's Corner with Michael. Thanks for doing a great job as always and bringing your best. And also want a special thanks to our travel guests, Robert Kaufman, my friend and co-host of the travel segment, and also David Benham, the Director of Club Operations at the Boulders Resort out in western parts of the United States. Thanks, David, for sharing a little bit about it. And you can go to thebouldersresort.com as their website if you want to learn more about it. Maybe plan a trip out to the Scottsdale area. That's the general area of the resort, so you can check that out as well. But and then obviously my special guest doing double duty tonight, both on the Coach's Corner panel and also on the show as my special featured guest of the evening. But he'll be back again, if not before the end of this season. He'll definitely be back next season on Coach's Corner, and we may have some other projects we may work on in between, and we'll keep you posted on that. But on that note, I want to thank everybody again for tuning into the broadcast. Don't forget to go to the iGolf Sports YouTube channel, subscribe there, and you can check up not only tonight's broadcast, but all of the previously aired shows as well. And if you just enjoy kicking back and listen to the audio version, you can go to Spreaker.com or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can check them out there. But on that note, thanks everybody for tuning into Golf Talk Live, and I will see you next week. God bless.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. We'd like to thank this week's Coach's Corner panel, and a special thank you to tonight's guest. Remember to join Ted every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central on Golf Talk Live. And be sure to follow Ted on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're interested in being a guest on Golf Talk Live, send Ted an email at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.